In our classes this morning, the Year 12 boys have already led us through a decade of the Rosary. The month of May is dedicated to Mary. As a Marist school, this is very important to us, and we hope that you will continue to join us throughout the month on Mondays in the chapel at lunch, as we ask Mary, our good mother, to continue to pray for us.
During the holidays, 34 students and 4 staff went on a study tour in Europe. To tell us about the trip, please welcome Max Summers from Year 11.
Good morning, Mr. Miller, special guests, families and friends, staff and fellow students. In the holidays just past, I was privileged enough to embark on the 2018 European Study Tour. The tour was thoroughly enjoyed by students and teachers alike, as we relished what we learnt about a range of topics as we visited various parts of Europe. We visited Belgium, France and the United Kingdom. Today I will share with you the amazing experience shared by all, and strongly encourage all those who contemplate travelling on the tour in future to do so. After a long flight, we landed in Brussels on the 10th of April. We travelled in coach by about an hour south to the historic Walloon city of Mons. Mons' history dates back to the times of Julius Caesar and was a battlefield during the First World War. It was heavily bombed by the Allies in the Second World War. We visited the Mons Museum with our knowledgeable tour guides, where we learned about Mons' eventful past. We then visited St. Symphorion's military cemetery, the only cemetery that contains Commonwealth and German soldiers. From there we visited the town of Ypres. Ypres is situated in the Flanders Fields and was the site of the First and Second Battle of Ypres during the First World War. Whilst in Ypres, we travelled the area surrounding and visited the sites famed World War I sites in Hill 60 and Caterpillar Crater. We travelled to nearby Bayernwald, which are a section of restored German trenches where Hitler served during the First World War. We then visited a range of First World War cemeteries, including Tyncott Cemetery. This is the largest Commonwealth War Graves Commission cemetery in the world. Ben Fowler, Michael Sergi, Dominic Zapier and I laid a wreath on behalf of the school at the last post ceremony at Menine Gate. Menine Gate is a memorial in Ypres containing the names of 54,896 missing Commonwealth soldiers from the First World War. A last post ceremony has been held there every night since 1927, except during the Second World War, to commemorate these men and ensure that their sacrifice is not forgotten. Whilst in Ypres, I managed to find my great-great-uncle, Rifleman Sean F. Summers of the New Zealand Rifle Brigade, at the Messine Ridge New Zealand Memorial. This was a special moment that I will never forget. Whilst in France, we visited Fromelles. The Battle of Fromelles has been described as the worst 24 hours in Australia's entire history. From the 19th to 20th of July 1916, 5,533 Australians perished in this battle, which was merely used as a diversion for the German forces as they were fighting the British at the Somme. We visited the VC Corner Australian Cemetery Memorial. We then visited the Fromelles Pheasant Wood Military Cemetery, where over 250 Australian and British soldiers have been buried. After the battle, No Man's Land was littered with corpses, and the Germans dug mass graves near Pheasant Wood. Their remains were only discovered in 2009. They were all reburied at the cemetery pictured up there. As we left for the UK, we stopped by at Dunkirk. In 1940, Dunkirk was used as an evacuation point for the Allied troops from the German forces who were closing in on them as they were trapped on the beach. 338,226 predominantly British soldiers were brought to safety by means of civilian vessels who had responded to the call to save the army by Winston Churchill. In Calais, we boarded the P&O ferry to Dover. We then drove west towards Windsor Castle. This is one of many royal residences, and we managed to take a group photo with some policemen who were guarding the entry. We then travelled to Stratford-upon-Avon, the home of the immortal bard William Shakespeare. Here we visited the school where Shakespeare's love of writing was born. We also visited the house Shakespeare lived in when he lived in Stratford. We were privileged to be involved in workshops run by the Royal Shakespeare Company. These workshops demonstrated to us what we had to be thinking about as an actor and how many layers there are to a scene. We then travelled to Oxford, the city of dreaming spires. Here we travelled the streets watching age-old Morris dancing, looking at the markets and visiting the History of Science Museum. Afterwards we travelled to Christ Church at Oxford University. This is the site where some sets of the Harry Potter films were based off. Next stop on the tour was Bath. The city that was first established by the Romans in 60 AD. They built luxurious baths where we visited the remains of some that still stand today. The prehistoric monument of Stonehenge was next on the itinerary. Some historians estimate that the monument was used as a burial ground and has been standing since 3000 BC. After witnessing the stones, we toured onwards to Salisbury Cathedral. This cathedral is considered one of the leading examples of early English architecture. Our tour guides walked us through hundreds of years of history as we traversed the cathedral over. The cathedral contained the best preserved current copy of the Magna Carta. After a short stop at Winchester, which used to be the capital of England before London, we made our way to the quiet, peaceful village of Steventon. Steventon was the home of famed 1800s female author Jane Austen. Here we visited the church she would have attended and had an afternoon tea with the locals of Steventon. After we had been moving around the English countryside for about a week, we finally headed to London. Now in London, we were privileged enough to take part in something truly special. Many of us may not get a chance to participate in something so important in the future. We were in attendance for the Anzac Day service at Westminster Abbey. Being there on behalf of the school was truly an honour. Members of the royal family were present, as was the High Commissioners of Australia and New Zealand. Ben Quinnell in Year 9 and Mrs Murdoch laid a wreath at the cenotaph before we honoured the sacrifice of the Anzacs over 100 years ago. Afterwards, we visited Churchill's war rooms. This was the site underground where Churchill commanded the war effort as the Germans heavily bombed London. One night we were taken around the streets of Whitechapel in the East End, where the notorious serial killer Jack the Ripper terrorised the streets in 1888. Our guides created a tense atmosphere as we visited the sites of the murders. After a day trip to Canterbury Cathedral, we watched a performance of Aladdin at the Prince Edward Theatre. The final day we were scheduled to leave at 10 o'clock at night. We managed to squeeze in a tour of the London dungeons, which gave the boys quite a fright, as well as visits of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre and the Tower of London. The Globe was a theatre where all of Shakespeare's plays were performed. The building has been rebuilt to look exactly the same as it did in the 1600s. At the Tower of London, we visited the museum inside and saw a vast display of armour and weapons. We then visited the Crown Jewels. A special thanks must go out to Mrs Miller, Mr McGinnity and Mr Brennan, who gave up their holidays with their families to take us on an opportunity of a lifetime, and to Mrs Murdoch, who gave hours of her time organising every aspect of the tour so that everything could run as smoothly as it did. Thank you.
Thanks, Max, for sharing your trip with us. The winter season has begun, and today we will acknowledge those students selected in our senior first grade teams. I would ask our special guest, Mr Emerton, to present the players, their jumpers, and invite Mr Newell to announce the first grade rugby league squad.
Thank you, Aidan. Mr Emerton, Mr Miller, staff, parents and gentlemen of the college, it's my great pleasure to present to you this morning the members of the first grade rugby league squad for 2018. Most of you will be aware that only 17 players can play in one match. We have a squad of 34, and the reason we have that is there are some boys present who won't play a game this season through season-ending injuries, or they're the young guys from year 10 and some of the younger ones in year 11 that we are bringing through to potentially fulfil their first grade spots next year and the year after. So without any further ado, could I please introduce you to Marcus Moore, our captain for 2018. His vice-captain, Jake Elphick. Anthony Booker. Sam Cantwell. Isaac Choice. Carlin Dean. Lachlan Death. In his absence, Brandon Donnelly. Also in his absence, Max Donovan. Brodie Dooner. Liam Fitzsimmons. Paul Grove. Jack Hartnett. James Hill. Mitch Kelly. In his absence, Jared Kinchin. Jay Kirk. Cameron Lawrence. Brodie Leone. Isaac Massima. Lachlan McGrady. Jordan McGrath. In his absence, Ben Quinlan. Gian Rapatoni. Bailey Rogers. Sam Shriek. In his absence, Sam Sheehan. Jacob Sykes. Cruz Tweedy. Kyle Wakeham. Sam Wackerbacker. In his absence, Brandon Webster Mansfield. James Wilson. And Cameron Williams. It's a great pleasure to be able to work with these guys along with Mr. Bullock and Miss Burke, so please congratulate our first grade squad for 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. To announce our first grade football team, please welcome Mr. McGovern.
Thank you, Mitch. Good morning, Mr. Miller, Mr. Emerton, parents, guests, fellow staff and students. It gives me great pleasure to present the first grade football squad for 2018. Starting with our captain, Xander Egan. With our goalkeeper, Lachlan Curran. Adrian Akuri. Jaden Barner. Nick DeFrank. Alex D'Souza. Michael Franklin Tripodi. Harrison Jones. Ryan Kidd. Aidan Limbry. Alex Mannion. Christian Malone. Nathan Price. Malcolm Whelan. Jack Williams. And Liam Zammit. The boys are undefeated so far this season, so hopefully we'll be standing up here later with a trophy to show you. Please congratulate the first grade football squad.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern and Mr. Emerton. During Easter, a group of Year 11 students travelled to the Solomon Islands on an immersion. To tell us about this experience, please welcome the Solomon Islands pilgrims.
We are welcome you. Guests from St. Martin's School.
What all of you just saw is footage of the young people of the St. Marshland School at Venga Point singing us a welcome song. This is one of the many times during our experience with the people of the Solomon Islands that we were overwhelmed with their hospitality. As we left, we felt nervous, excited and tired as we left at 4:30 in the morning. From the minute we stepped off the plane in Honiara and got into the back of the school truck for our journey to the Brothers' house, the people smiled and waved to us as we passed. This continued as we arrived at Venga Point and was highlighted in the kindness that each boy at the training school showed to each one of us. Highlights of the trip included playing cards in the dorms at night, seeing the primary school kids so happy at school and eager to learn, and snorkeling, spearfishing along the reef, and spending time getting to know the boys of the training school. My dorm mate, Junior Nofo, was extremely kind and welcoming and astounded me with his happiness at the simplest of things. The landscapes of this area were breathtaking, and another highlight for me was watching an amazing sunset by myself on a white sanded beach with the water lapping at my feet as I sat on a log drinking a coconut.
I really enjoyed doing things just like the boys on the island. We loved joining in the masses and prayers and the feasts and dancing, but also simple things like drinking coconut straight off the tree. Sleeping in a dorm with men who slept with machetes and waking up to an earthquake on the first morning is also something I won't easily forget.
Staying at Venga Point was physically hard, but most of all, it was mentally and emotionally difficult. Some of the challenges were trying to sleep on a wooden bed and the lack of running water and access to facilities such as food, the heat and humidity, and the Solomon's time, which means that things can happen at any time. A good example of this is at 8:30 in the morning, a flight from Gizo, which eventually took off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Communication was also a challenge as the boys speak Pidgin English, but they made a real attempt to understand us and tried to speak English as well.
Using Nick's photos, Jared has put together a film of our experience. We hope you enjoy it.
No.
During the film, you would have seen a definition of solidarity. Unity and respect for individuals with a common interest. This is one reason why you see the Solomon Island flag next to our Australian flag this morning. We're all Maoris, and we certainly felt that on the island. But we also have a deeper respect for how happy and content the people are, even though they had so little materially. The connections we made with the people were real. I think I was fully respectful of who they were as individuals. I was able to embrace their culture, and this resulted in having the best time possible. Preparing for the Easter Sunday feast with the boys was outstanding. We all joined in the process of collecting food, chopping food, and cooking. We also felt incredibly valued by them.
When the boys of the current Year 10 head over next year, we would like to be able to send them gifts, especially for the young men in the training school. We hope to be able to send things like fishing rods and lines, soap, toothpaste, deodorant, clothing, books, and stationery. They also need things like bowls, plates, cutlery, and water bottles. In order to do this, we need to continue to raise money. If we can raise $10,000, we'll be able to help them fund their current major project, which aims to get running water to the taps. At the moment, all water has to be carried from the stream or the water tanks. There have been many successful activities during the Lenten Appeal, like Champagne Day. It is coming up and is a great opportunity to do more fundraising. We encourage every boy to buy bands for unlimited rides and support the food stalls.
One question Miss Clark asked us was, did the immersion experience change you? When you experience something as difficult as this trip, it's not hard to be changed. We should value the little things and not take anything for granted. We are more sure than ever now how lucky we are in Australia. I can now look past all the little faults that we like to whinge about, even the ref food, and see that we still have it pretty good. These boys were just as happy as us, if not happier, despite not having half the luxuries we have.
The highlight for me was on Easter Saturday night when we just had mass and a good feed The music started blaring from the speakers, and all us boys got in the middle and just danced without care. Other highlights were learning their traditional island dances, the Easter Vigil parade with candles, as everyone on the island walked from the wharf to the chapel, and heading to the stream for a wash after a long day. I've learned to accept people for who they are, not for what they have. Respect and honesty and faith are values the people of the Solomon Islands truly live out. On behalf of all the boys who went, I would also like to thank Miss Clark and Mr. Tabiri for accompanying us on this trip. Also thank you to Miss Walsh, who organised the transport, insurance and everything else which needed to be done. Thank you.
Well done to all those involved in that important and worthwhile trip. I now invite Mr. Edmonton to now present the first grade rugby union side their jumpers, and Mr. Malasilia to read out the side.
Good morning, staff and students. It's my great pleasure to present the Team of the Year, our first 15 rugby union squad for 2018. And their playing order: Mitchell Kelly, Samuel Cantwell, Samuel Wakabaka, James Hill, Jake Alphick, Lachlan Alworthy, Harry Lane, Jacob Sykes, Lachlan McGrady, James Wilson, our captain. In his absence, Max Donovan, Jake Hartnett, in his absence, Sam Sheehan, Isaac Choice, in his absence, Brandon Donnelly, Paul Grove, Sam Schreck, Sam Canty, Archie Allen, Daniel Brennan, Harry McDonnell, Joshua Schofield, Bailey Rogers, Nicholas Alcorn, and Yaron Fair Townsend. Please put your hands together for our first grade.
Best wishes to our 3 senior sides for this season. Know that the college is behind you. Now it gives me great pleasure to tell you a little bit about our special guest. Mr. Brett Emerton is a world-class Australian footballer who has played for numerous teams around the world. From the year 2000, Brett made his first appearance on a global scale for the Dutch club Feyenoord after captaining the Oldie Roos in the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Winning the UEFA Winners' Medal for Feyenoord in 2002, he was further named as the Oceania Footballer of the Year. With a prolific career spanning 8 years for Blackburn Rovers in the English Premiership, Mr. Emerton returned home to Australia to play for Sydney FC in the A-League, where he eventually retired in 2014. With his abundant club success, Mr. Emerton also featured as a key player for the Socceroos for 14 years, receiving 95 caps for his nation. We are privileged to welcome Mr. Edmonton to St. Greg's to assist in our assembly today. Here is a short clip of some of Mr. Edmonton's highlights at his final club, Sydney FC. After the clip, I'll invite Mr. Edmonton to come forward and respond to a few questions I have about his career.
Then finally, the moment Sydney FC fans have been waiting for, their marquee man Brett Emerton finding the back of the net.
Emerton, oh brilliant! Brett Emerton scores for Sydney FC! His first in a Sky Blues jersey.
In blustery conditions, a Brett Emerton corner well and truly knocked the wind out of Brisbane's sails.
It's in the back of the net. Well, Brett Emerton is claiming the credit. He must have taken a touch off somebody.
And a penalty is given. A penalty is given and a yellow card.
Brett Emerton had no trouble putting the penalty away.
1-0 and Sydney.
When he went back to playing football, Kissel set Emerton up just after half-time.
Needs a good ball in the middle. Here's Emerton, big chance, Emo! Brett Emerton opens a scoring for Sydney FC. It's a big moment in their season.
The 10-man glory then coughed up possession in dangerous territory, and Brett Emerton made them pay.
Sydney FC have come from behind to lead 2-1. Well, he doesn't like making the headlines, Brett Emerton, but he will for that goal. It was a delightful finish. Del Piero out for a pass again. In a shape to that delivery. Emerton drives! Brett Emerton scores for Sydney with 2 minutes to go. And they've almost lifted the roof off Allianz Stadium. Are they finally going to get a home win this season at this venue? Well, who could deny them? They've stood together on their digs in sky blue, and they've fought for their lives at Allianz Stadium.
We just saw some of the highlights earlier of your time at Sydney FC. Can you talk to us a bit about some of the clubs you felt have the greatest impact on your career?
Yeah, I was lucky to play for some very big clubs throughout my time, but I think starting from a young age, I got the opportunity to go down to the Australian Institute of Sport and spend a couple of years there. I moved away from home at the age of 15, and that really taught me, I guess, what it was like to live and breathe the life of a professional footballer. So I owe those couple of years a lot to my development as a player and as a person. My first professional club here in Australia was a team called Sydney Olympic. I moved there at the age of 17. Football in Australia at that time was not fully professional, so it was a step in the right direction, but my ultimate goal was to eventually play in Europe, and I got the opportunity to do that after I played here in the Sydney 2000 Olympics. I went to a team in Holland called Feyenoord, a massive team in Europe, and got the opportunity to play there straight away and won a UEFA Cup with them in 2002 before moving to my Blackburn was where my dream was. I wanted to play in the English Premier League. I spent almost 9 years there, so very lucky to have done that before returning back home and finish my career, as you've seen, at Sydney FC.
At St. Greg's, we talk a lot about the pride of our college and our college crest in blue and maroon. What does pride in the jersey mean to you?
I think pride in your jersey, I think it's obviously a personal achievement, a reward for the hard work you put in to achieve being able to represent your school, your club, or hopefully eventually your country. So, and it's also, I guess, a responsibility as well on yourself. You're in a team environment to go out there and give 100% each and every game. You're representing yourself, you're representing, like I say, your other people, the school, your parents, your family. That's what I think it means.
Finally, do you have any advice for good sportsmen in the college that were looking to become great sportsmen?
Yeah, I think well, these are words of advice, I guess, in life as general. I think you need to work hard to achieve success. Nothing comes without working hard at it. I think natural ability can only take you so far, and I've played with many players who probably had maybe more ability than I have, but through hard work and dedication, I think I was able to achieve better results than they did. So I think no matter how good you are, without hard work, you're never going to be successful. So I would firstly say that, and always be willing to listen and learn. Doesn't matter how old you get in life, you always continue to learn. Even when I retired from football at the age of 35, and even now I'm learning about the game. So it's always evolving, and as a player and a person, you need to evolve with it. So always learn from your coaches, learn from your fellow players, the players you play against, and I think that'll put you on the right path.
I'm going to just give a round of applause, Mr. Everton, giving his time today. Thank you. Please now give your attention to our college headmaster, Mr. Miller, who will give his address.
Brett, parents, staff, gentlemen of the college, good morning and welcome to our assembly this morning. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you to Brett for giving up his time and making the college his priority this morning. And I'd ask our college captain, Mitch Kelly, to make a presentation to him of our appreciation. I'd ask you to put your hands together once again. Thank you. Thanks, Brett. Thank you to all those people who have been involved in putting this morning's assembly together. It's been a really informative assembly, to say the least. It was interesting just to hear to Brett what he said then about commitment and effort. I talk to you often about that success formula of attitude, commitment and effort. The fact that he highlighted that just then, I said it just goes a long way with it, gentlemen, so I must be on the right track somewhere. I was listening to two boys the other day just talking about their lunch. They were sitting down outside and one boy pulled out his sandwiches and started eating it. And he looked at the other boy who pulled out a sandwich, he unwrapped it and just sat there and just looked at it. The other boy said to him in the end, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, it's just a sandwich." He said, "It's got ham on it, it's got mayonnaise on it." He said, "There's no mustard." And he said, "It's got wilted lettuce." And he said, "What's wrong with that?" And he said, "Well, I hate mayonnaise, I hate wilted lettuce, and I really like mustard and it's not on there." And he said, "Well, why don't you talk to your father about making you the sandwich you want?" And he said, "Well, the only problem with that is I make the sandwich myself every day." I thought, okay, where do you go with it from there? It's all about taking responsibility for your own actions. The fact that that gentleman could have made his own sandwich, got what he wanted if he'd put his mind to it. I was talking to a boy the other day who got numerous 3s on his report, and mainly they were all there for homework. And I said to him, "Why have you got so many 3s for homework from this one teacher?" He said, "Oh, the teacher doesn't like me." And I said, "Really? Well, let's just step back for a minute here. Did you do the homework, yes or no?" "No, I didn't." "Righto. Does it really matter whether the teacher likes you or not?" "Well, I guess not." I said, "Well, basically it comes back to you. You're the one who has to do your homework. Once you've got that, we'll get rid of the 3s. As far as the teacher not liking you or liking you, the ball's in your court on that. You need to go back and talk to that teacher. And if your perception is they don't like you, sit down and talk to them about that and try and correct that perception." Then I moved to another boy who at another school had a problem with getting N awards for his HSC area. He wasn't doing various assessments and the teachers encouraged him to do them, and he just sort of refused to do them because he had better things in life to worry about, not his HSC. So what the staff did in the end, they pulled him out of a rep side. He was supposed to go away representing the school and he was going to play that particular sport in the rep side. Boy got very upset about it, complained to his parents about it, complained to staff about it, told them how unfair the whole thing was. And yet when they took him back a few steps on it and they said, "Well, your main priority at the moment is your HSC. Getting those assessments done is part of the priority of getting to that HSC. Who is the one who hasn't done the work for the N awards?" And he had to admit it was himself. And if he got back on track, got the N awards out of the road and did the assessments, then he could go on to the next sporting carnival that the school was going to represent in. Gentlemen, there are so many things that you have in your lives that you have responsibility for. And it comes back to you about how they're going to work out, and it's your actions that are going to make the difference. The fact that we talk about commitment, effort and attitude, those three things are so important for you, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the sporting field, debating, musical, all those things are very important. And just those examples I've given you this morning, each one of them could have changed things if they wanted to. So the challenge really for you is going ahead, you've had a look at progress reports, you know what you've got, everyone can improve on what they've got. So the challenge for you is take responsibility and do something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Please now be upstanding for the singing of the Sultan as our official party leave the stage.
Soon